Homer, memorizing the Iliad Odyssey.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you if you did something.
He didn't write that.
That's true.
He didn't invent it, right? I don't think it's true. That's true.
You know, I wonder about these people that memorize the Quran. You know, thousands and thousands of verses. They have every single thing. I mean, that's one of the things that they, pride themselves on. Memorizing every single thing.
Oh, you're Joan.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, thanks. Definitely. Okay. Here we go.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. It's so good to see you. My goodness, we got a nice full house today, keeping warm on a chilly fall day. Perfect day. Perfect day. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Buffalo. It is so good to have all of you here, bringing the fire and the spirit into our space. My name is Joan Montagnes, and I have the honor and the privilege of serving you, this congregation, as minister. Even if this is your first time here, I get to serve you. Wow, what a thrill. It's so nice to have you here. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Buffalo. We are blessed to be here together, and we acknowledge that the land upon which we meet rests on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee people, original nations of this land who continue to call for justice and self-determination. In this church, we encourage everyone to get all those vaccines and boosters and all those other goodies to protect you and everyone else against COVID-19. Masks are optional attire. We encourage you to feel safe and comfortable. Do whatever you need to do that, and take care of yourself and each other. Don't forget, Tuesday mornings, what do we got? Coffee Clatch, 10 a.m. Y'all come. Parish Hall. Our 2023 stewardship campaign continues to build community. This year, we're trying to reach out to as many friends and members as possible for personal get-to-know-you kind of one-on-one experiences. After the service, you can find a member of the stewardship team at a table in the parish hall who can tell you all about the campaign. If you haven't received a call from a visiting steward yet, the person at the information table can help you all up with that. That will be all under control. Also, some super nice news. We are already $103,000 towards our goal, our pledge goal of $425. Right? Just about a quarter of the way there. So we're pretty excited, and y'all know who's got the other 3/4, right? I'm not naming names. But you can see the people who have helped us get this far on this tree. And if you're really excited, you can have a look a bit of our budget after the service. Come on up and have a look at our pie chart here. Oh, that's all I've got for announcements. The rest are in your order of service. Do I have one more? Oh, yes, I do. Sorry, Bonnie. Grief.
And I thought, well, give you some of my history, because this church has a large part to do with that. I first walked into this church in 1986, knowing only one person. Her name was Rosemary Purdy. Some of you may remember her. She was my supervisor at Children's Hospital in Buffalo. Rosemary had invited me to the place that would become what I call my spiritual home. At that time, I was leaving my wife of 8 years and coming out. It was a frightening time. I first shared my coming out with my dear friend Rosemary at a time she was going through a divorce of her own. We were very close friends. We knew each other very, very well. We cried together many times, not knowing what was ahead for either of us. It was a dark and a scary time, leaving the woman that I loved very much while trying to be at ease with myself as a gay man. Many, many tears were shed in the back pews of the sanctuary. I felt welcomed, I felt understood when I came. More importantly, I felt accepted and confirmed as a gay man, being true to myself. As an active part of a group of individuals that started Interweave, a group that met monthly here, I was an active part of Interweave, a group that met monthly here, had meetings, had workshops, and ultimately became part of the process in which this church became a welcoming congregation. Also, I lost my partner in 1992 to HIV/AIDS. His memorial service was here in the sanctuary, in this space, with a large gathering of family and friends. His name and his father's name appear on the memorial plaque to the back of the sanctuary. The memorial garden outside this church will be, by my decree, my final resting place. The covenant groups that I am directly involved with as a facilitator and also as a member of one have been warm, caring, very welcoming. The kinds of discussion and the sharing we engage in is unlike any other experience that I've participated in. The values, the caring, the connecting, the empathizing, and the supporting of each other is what keeps me coming back. Thanks for being here.
So Ron emphasized that one of the reasons we gather together is for caring and connecting. And one of the ways we do that is each Sunday, we greet our neighbors. So greet your neighbor, say hello to somebody you might not even know, do it as safely and as comfortably as you both feel. Oh, roll your eyes. I saw that.
This morning's call to worship is drawn together by Jennifer Grayson. We come together every week, bound not by creed or a mutual desire to please one God or many gods. Yet we are drawn together by a belief that how we are in the world, who we are together, matters. We light this chalice together in the knowledge that love, not fear, can change this world. Come, let us worship. Please rise as you are willing or able and join in the words for chalice lighting. We gather in loving community, inspiring one another to transform ourselves to create a more just and compassionate world. Please remain standing and join in our hymn number 366, found in your gray hymnal.
So the soloists and Chris and I are going to demonstrate this one for you. It's really short and sweet. You don't necessarily need your hymnals, but if you want to use them, you can. It's basically the same thing twice, and the second time it has a slightly different ending. So we're going to sing through it for you, and then you can sing it with us. So here it goes. 2, 3.
Nope, 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 nope. How about now? Okay. Ooh, there's a ghost in the machine. Nope. If I stand back here, it's good? There's no humming? Okay, stop your humming. I can hear it. You don't hear the humming? You can hear the humming, you can't hear the humming. Okay, I'll move to here, and you're just gonna see what you see. Okay, because I know the folks out in YouTube land need to have me in a frame. Anyway, you know what? This is the church that monsters built. This is the mummy who raised the wall inside the church that monsters built. This is the spider that started to crawl that shocked the mummy who raised the wall inside the church that monsters built. This is the werewolf who hung the door that stopped the spider who started to crawl that shocked the mummy who raised the wall inside the church that monsters built. This is the skeleton who nailed down the floor that worried the werewolf, who hung the door that stopped the spider who started to crawl, that shocked the mummy who raised the wall inside the... See, the choir's got it. These are the bats that hung from the beam, and the choir will understand that too. These are the bats that hung from the beam. Is that right? Yes, that rattled the skeleton who nailed down the floor, that upset the werewolf who hung the door, that stopped the spider who started to crawl, that shocked the mummy who raised the wall inside the... This is the zombie who started to scream, that scattered the bats who hung from the beam, that rattled the skeleton who nailed down the floor, who upset the werewolf who hung the door, that stopped the spider that started to crawl, that shocked the mummy who raised the wall inside. Why is it only the choir that is helping me with this? Oh, and a few people over there. All right, you guys are not holding up your end. All right. This is the ghost that shouted, boo! That frightened, nope. We'll go with frightened. Frightened the zombie who started to scream. He startled this zombie who started to scream. That scattered the bats that hung from the beam. That rattled started the werewolf, hung the door, stopped the spider, mummy who raised the wall inside the church that monsters built. What do we got up to here? Okay. This is the old witch who stirred the brew, that frightened the zombie, who spooked the ghost, who shouted out, boo! That startled the zombie who started to scream, that scattered the bats who hung from the beam, that rattled the skeleton who nailed down the floor, that the door, that stopped the spider who started to crawl, that shocked the mummy who raised the wall inside the church that monsters built. This is the vampire who tripped on his feet,
that frightened the witch, the old witch who stirred the brew, who spooked the ghost, who shouted, boo! That startled the startled the zombie who, you could do better than that, scream! That scattered the bats that hung from the beam, that rattled the skeleton, that nailed down the floor, that upset the werewolf who hung the door, that stopped the spider who started to crawl, that shook the mummy who raised the wall inside the church that monster built. We're almost there. You all are the kids who yelled, trick or treat. Right, you yelled trick or treat. That panicked the vampire who tripped on his feet, that frightened the old witch who stirred her brew, that spooked ghost who shouted out, boo! Ooh, what did she do? She startled the zombie who started to scream, that scattered the bats who hung from the beam, that rattled the skeleton who nailed down the floor, that the werewolf who shut the door, that stopped the spider who started to crawl, shot the mummy who raised the wall inside the church that monsters built. Okay, we're done.
I got so distracted I didn't know where we were. Every week, we take a good portion of our Sunday morning offering and give it away to a social justice cause outside the church walls. This month, we are supporting the good work of Buffalo String Works. Buffalo String Works ignites personal and community leadership through accessible, youth-centered music education. They cultivate a positive space that supports their students' development into curious, confident, committed individuals who make a difference, exemplary musicians who are also exemplary citizens. You can hear Buffalo String Works students and staff perform at our casual concert right here, Saturday, October 15th at 2 p.m. To support our Share the Plate ministry, you can use PayPal by going to our website, www.buffalouu.org, and clicking on the blue donate button. I bet you could all repeat that too. Or you can send a check by mail to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Buffalo, 695 Elmwood Ave, Buffalo, New York, 14222. You can also arrange a regular automatic deposit with your bank. If yours is a gift to our Share the Plate ministry, please write SHARE on the memo line, and it will be shared between Buffalo String Works and the church operating budget. If yours is a welcome gift to our congregation, please write Pledge 2022 on the memo line. Either way, please write UUCB on the important line. Thank you for your building generosity and courage in our community.
Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle wide.
What if accountability wasn't scary? By Maya Mingus. What if accountability wasn't scary? It will never be easy or comfortable, but what if it wasn't scary? What if our own accountability wasn't something we ran from, but something we ran towards and desired, appreciated, held as sacred? What if we cherished opportunities to take accountability as precious opportunities to practice liberation, to practice love, to practice the kinds of people, elders to be, and souls we want to be, to practice that which we can only practice in real time? After all, we can only practice courage when we are afraid. We can only practice taking accountability when we have wronged or harmed or hurt. Practice yields the sharpest analysis.
Let's open our hearts and minds in a quiet moment of prayer, reflection, and meditation. May the doors of our church be so open that we feel crisp drafts of autumn air on our skin, and the harsh sounds of sirens and shouting voices outside find their ways into the peace of our sanctuary. May we, sheltered here, sometimes feel tears on our cheeks. In silent moments, may each of us hear the breathing of our neighbors and know this is the breath of the world. May we draw the circle wide and wider still in our hearts and in our home, this sanctuary. Always enough room for those who want to come in. Always inviting. Always enticing. Always ready to be transformed by the new. And may that crowding, that creating, that growing be a gladness. Today, we especially hold in our hearts the residents of Florida who are recovering from devastating hurricane forces that destroyed homes, communities, and lives. And now let us open our sanctuary of memory, caring, accountability, and hope to the names of all our loved ones, suffering in sorrow and celebrating in joy, each name a breath, and each breath a prayer. The breath of nature is upon us. The spirit of life is within us. The community of love is among us. So be it. Blessed be. And let the church say, Amen. As I venture day by day into this wild and precious world, sometimes dodging minor asteroids, sometimes lazing back on soft, favorable currents. As I venture day by day, encountering all the gorgeous and varied folks out there, warm and fuzzies as well as cold pricklies, cookie bakers, and book banners, the jovial and the junkie. As I venture day by day into this wild and precious world, I am sometimes able to keep my cool in my deep frustration and frequent confusion by quietly chanting to myself a little mantra. People are complex. People are complex. People are complex. This little mantra also helps me when I find myself, as I often do, having caused hurt or offense. Sometimes I'm alerted to the fact that I've participated in an injury that cannot be healed through simple apology or even compensation. At times like that, when I know I have participated in incalculable harm, when I'm oozing with self-loathing, owning the monster within, the only way I can listen to what I do not want to hear, the only way I can move forward from that painful moment of accountability, the only way I can break open into a greater grace, the only way that I can lean into the transformational power of love is to chant quietly to my aching heart. People are complex. People are complex. People are complex. I am complex. What I'm trying to tell you, my best beloveds, is that you and I and all of us are held in a love that will not and cannot let us go. I'm trying to tell you that you and I and all of us are caring, righteous, spiritual, creative, and glorious. And that you and I and all of us are also, amongst a lot of other things, also monsters. We can't help it. It's part of being human. That said, our responsibility, our calling as people of courageous faith is not to deny or kill the monsters within or the monsters who haunt our collective history, those monsters who made us who we are today. Our responsibility, our calling as people of courageous faith is not to kill the monster, but to be accountable, to cherish accountability as a precious opportunity to practice collective liberation, to practice love, to practice being the kinds of people, the kinds of elders to be, the kinds of souls we want to be. Our responsibility, our calling as people of courageous faith is not to die of shame because some part of us is monstrous. Welcome to being human. Our responsibility, our calling as people of courageous faith is to bravely welcome opportunities of accountability and transformational healing as sacred moments of growth. It's Indigenous Peoples Weekend. time, I'm afraid, brave beloveds, to get accountable together. So, yeah, let's start with some stories. Why not? And we'll start where, Euros usually start these things. In our haunted and haunting past. Way back in 1492, Columbus, backed and funded by the Royal House of Spain, sailed the ocean blue and discovered the Americas. And when he returned to Spain and to the Pope to make his report, he told them how lovely it was over on the other side of the ocean, how nice the people were, and how open the land was, and how much gold and other goodies there were willing to, just sitting there waiting to be exploited. Well, the Pope listened deeply to Columbus' report, thought deeply, this was, I just want to say this right now, this was a Borgia Pope, so we already know he's got some stuff going on. Okay, so the Pope took pen and paper in hand and began to write a papal bull that we now call the Doctrine of Discovery. Now, I'm not going to quote it all because it goes on at length and it's all in Latin, but here's the gist. The Pope declared that the Catholic Church gave Portugal and Spain religious backing to expand their territories in the Americas and Africa for the sake of spreading Christianity. He said, any land not inhabited by Christians may be claimed by any Christian who wants it. Any other nation may be overthrown and brought into the Christian faith by any means necessary, and any indigenous people who defend themselves against such actions could be considered enemies of God, so feel free to bring down the wrath of the Almighty and exterminate at will. Now, we might like to think to ourselves that was a long time ago. I wasn't there. Sins of the fathers and all that. I'm a Buffalo Unitarian Universalist, not a 15th century member of the Spanish Catholic royal family. Or maybe you are, I don't know. But here's the thing. There's a continuous line of history connecting moment to moment. The wet ink on that papal doctrine of discovery to the pews in which you are sitting at this time today. Ugh, accountability. Now we could trace that line of connected moments through a tangled mess of increasingly matted systems of oppression and get quite lost in the process. People are complex. History is made out of a whole bunch of people. History is really, really, really complex. So we'll simplify matters by following a timeline just through a few key points of Buffalonian and Unitarian history to arrive where we are today, Sunday morning. And those who wish to ponder further, you can find a list of resources on the RE table in the parish hall after the service. So let's get started connecting some of these dots. Let's begin by acknowledging, as we do every Sunday morning, that there were people here on this land before anybody sailed across from Europe. There were lots of civilized people here living full and fully cultured and fully educated lives. The Haudenosaunee and other nations were living here on this land forever. But one day in 1676, through papal bull magic, all of Western New York was given, sight unseen, to the English Duke of York. Here, poof, it's yours. It's all yours. And by the way, just ignore all the people living here already. They don't count. People? What people? I don't see any people. And so it began. It's a bit hard to tell when the French voyageurs began traipsing over Erie County, but we do know that just two short years after the Duke of York was gifted the Haudenosaunee territory, Robert Cavalier Sieur de La Salle explored much of the land from the St. Lawrence Seaway down to the Gulf of Mexico, and he claimed everything he could see and touch, including the area that we now call Buffalo, for France. I want it, I see it, it's mine. After that, we see about 100 years of English and French and Indigenous people fighting each other until 1758, when another Frenchman, Chabert Jagard, built the first European settlement where we now see downtown Buffalo. So, not long after that, there were treaties signed, and you know how treaties go, not good. And the War of American Independence in 1776, which was disastrous for the Haudenosaunee. They were slaughtered in battles and then banished from their homelands. That's some local monstrous history for you. Let's continue our romp through the doctrine of discovery from a more spiritual perspective, shall we? Well, just after the Haudenosaunee were slaughtered in Western New York during the War of Independence, way back in Boston, so that's in Western New York, in Boston, before anyone in North America was calling themselves Unitarian, a bunch of well-meaning liberal Christians who would eventually end up calling themselves Unitarian, but a bunch of well-meaning liberal Christians, folks who are spiritual forebearers, created something called the Society for Propagating the Gospel Among the Indians. The goal of this society was to assimilate indigenous people into the culture of the colonizers. So you see, even proto-Unitarians in North America were swallowing the doctrine of discovery papal bull. And the story continues. President Ulysses Grant, you remember him? He invited all the Protestant denominations to take over management of the American and Indian reserves and agencies. President Grant's hope was that he would be able to cut down on reported government corruption while simultaneously helping to civilize indigenous people. In other words, he passed the hot potato of the Indian problem to the churches. Here, you deal with it. It's, bring on your morality and, if necessary, the wrath of Almighty God. Well, the American Unitarian Association was over the moon to be considered a mainline Protestant denomination by the president, and gleefully accepted responsibility of converting all of the tribes of Colorado, that's the Ute tribes, 8,000 souls, converting them all into liberal Christianity. Didn't take. Fancy that. Well, eventually the Unitarian mission, because it didn't take in Colorado, moved to Montana, where it established the Montana Industrial School for Indians. This is where Unitarian missionaries taught girls and boys from the Crow tribe how farming, mechanics, and home economics should be done from the European perspective. Now, this is one of those residential schools you hear tell about. Granted, no reports of abuse or mass graves have been uncovered from the Montana Industrial School for Indians yet, but children were taken from their families and forced to hide their culture and take on behaviors of colonizing forces. Just want to say, we got a few skeletons rattling in our closet, right? Oh, and I can go on. And you know me, I will. This one's a doozy. In 1909, so this building was built 1906, 1909. There's some perspective. 1909, President William Howard Taft, who was a Unitarian, appointed the president of the American Unitarian Association, so the Unitarian Pope, this guy named Samuel Atkins Elliot, Samuel Atkins Elliot, the head of the Unitarian Church, to the Federal Board of Indian Commissioners. The head of the Unitarian Church, Elliot, reminisced about his time as a commissioner and said that the goal of the Board of Indian Commissioners was to Americanize the original Americans. Yeah, he really said that. And it gets worse. He said, we sought not sudden transformation, but a gradual release from tribal habits and government supervision. As a commissioner, Elliot delivers speech entitled, tighten your seatbelts, folks, From Scalping Knives to the Can Opener, which argued how only assimilation to white culture could save Indigenous Americans from their own barbarism. Makes the skin crawl. Offensive on more levels than I can begin to even fathom. It wasn't until 1970, some of you might remember the 70s or heard tell of them. Think civil rights movement, think Vietnam War protests, think Summer of Love, think First Man on the Moon. It wasn't until 1970, 477 years after the doctrine of discovery was penned, 212 years after the first European houses were built here in Buffalo, 138 years after our Unitarian congregation was founded here in Buffalo, 80 years after 300 Lakota men, women, and children were rounded up and massacred at Wounded Knee, 64 years after the pew you are sitting in was built, and 61 years after a Unitarian president of the United States appointed the head of the Unitarian Universalist faith to follow the doctrine of discovery and civilize Indigenous people by right of God. It wasn't until 1970 that Unitarian Universalists first spoke up for the rights of Indigenous people to their own land, to their own culture, and to their own resources. We may not be 15th century Catholic Spanish royalty, but we live in a country built upon the foundation of colonization, racism, and genocide. And those are not just the sins of an invitation to lean into the transformational power of love. Let's sing. Number 95 in your gray hymnal, There is More Love Somewhere.
Please remain standing as we extinguish the flame of our chalice. As we extinguish the flame of this chalice, may we carry its light with us into the world in the power of peace, faith, justice, and love.
Let us go forth, answering the cry of justice with the work of peace, redeeming the pain of history with the grace of wisdom. Remember, you're blessed. Remember, you are a blessing. And above all else, remember, you are not alone. You are never alone. So be it. Blessed be. And let the church say, Amen.
Okay.